Are you? No, I just said sure. Leave them, not leave.
Good evening, everyone. It is 6 p.m. I'm Sue Hodgen, the Chair of Southport's Planning Board, and I'm calling to order our 2025 regular meeting. We ask that everyone silence or turn off your cell phones, please. We will start as always, with those who can and will, please stand for our invocation. Will you do that for us? And then we'll follow with our allegiance to country and flag.
Our beloved Father in heaven, we bow our heads before thee this day, humbly, as we come to this meeting and discuss this part of thy kingdom and its betterment and the things that we can do to progress it forward. We thank thee for all of the many blessings we have this beautiful day and the scenery around us, which we know that thou art responsible for. And we ask a blessing upon us that we will make the wise decisions necessary that will be pleasing unto thee. And we ask these things as all things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.
Item D on our agenda is the approval of the March 20th meeting minutes. You all received a copy of these in advance of our meeting, and they begin on page 2 of this evening's packet. Are there any changes or corrections? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve those March minutes as prepared? Thank you, Will, and a second. Thank you. That was Bob. Thank you. We have a motion and a second on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item E is the approval of tonight's agenda. You were also issued that in advance. Are there any additions or corrections to it? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the agenda? Will, thank you, and a second. Thank you, Fred. Appreciate it. There's a motion on the floor and a second. Any final discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That also passes unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. Item F is public comment. Do I hear a motion that we move into public comment? Thank you, Will, and a second. Thank you, Larry. Motion is on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Madam Deputy Clerk, please begin calling the names of those signed up.
Mr. Rich Bandera,
Rich, you know the drill. If you give your name and address before your comments. Thank you.
Rich Bandera, 409 North Burrington Ave in Southport. I'm here to express my opposition to the conditional zoning expansion into residential districts. I've been here obviously in the past on the same issue. I don't have to speak to the applicant's request because it's kind of more specific to their property, but because there's not spot zoning, that type of thing, to allow them to do that on their individual property, this request expands to the entire city. So in that request, what I've read is that from the past, we went round and round on this, and then the alderman back in last January, 4-2 vote against it. But I understand things have changed under the loss of the ETJ, those kind of things. But what I'm finding is, I don't want to speak to their request, but more about the impact of what conditional zoning could do to the remainder of the city. The past request or the planning board's process to that was to limit it, let's say, to 5-acre sites, to not allow anything over 40 feet. Those dimensional requirements were part of that whole effort, I guess. And those are not part of it at this point. There's no dimensional limit set on this application, including height. One of the bigger items, what I'd like to speak to on how it might affect me potentially, is that I live on Burrington Ave, and I guess how would I put it? There's a current land use plan which was adopted, a future land use plan in 2014, and we're from the March 20th meeting that you had. That new map or new comprehensive plan is about 45 days from being adopted. In that plan, my neighborhood is considered a traditional neighborhood. And in that plan, the density limits of that went up from 3 to 4 units per acre to 7 or so units per acre, almost a 60% increase. So conditional zoning, as it applies, always goes back to the land use map as part of the justification for the application. And, or, how you would kind of run through the process of an applicant's request. So before there were 5-acre sites that were limited on this kind of thing. And now it's anywhere. This could be a 33 by 100 foot deep lot, that type of thing. And so the density, so what I'm trying to get to is that the reference back to the current plan, I know you can't have a crystal ball of when that new plan will be adopted, but it's about 45 days away. It's not that far in the future. So to use the old mapping, I think is kind of I mean, we paid for this whole thing, I mean, this whole thing has taken almost 2 years to kind of come to, I guess it's somewhere in the state level right now. But to use that as a basis of looking at conditional zoning and the expansion of it, especially this kind of density increase, I think it would be prudent to wait till that's adopted before kind of considering it, because you're using this old outdated comprehensive plan for the basis of considering it. That's really all I have to say, but thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Tori?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And no one else is here to be able to offer them an opportunity to speak. So thank you, Rich. We appreciate you coming in. Do I hear a motion to end public comment? Thank you, Will, in a second. Thank you. Appreciate it. And we have a motion on the floor and a second. Any final discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And we are moving to item G, new business. Conditional zoning text amendment, page 17 in your packets. For those who've not been in Southport long, the two letters CZ don't evoke the same memories it does for a few of us at this table. This is not a new item for Vice Chair Lachlan, Will, Fred, and me. We remember a prior focal time. This is the first time this board and staff are talking about these latest documents. We are shedding the public's first light on the resurgence of Waterway, which was formerly Indigo Phase 2. In all truth, Southport could have had conditional zoning in residential areas well over a year ago. We possibly could have already had the conversations we'll have tonight, and the city would have had the potential for more significant interactions and leeway with developers, but that did not happen. When Waterway was introduced as Indigo Phase 2, it birthed the Project Indigo and No High Density Southport advocacy and social media groups, and their memberships were called to action to attempt to restrict Indigo Phase 2 to its original R20 zoning. The planning board, working in cooperation and agreement with that developer, did an extensive dive into that application, finally recommending to the Board of Aldermen that the application be denied. Ultimately, East West withdrew that application before the Board of Aldermen had a chance to vote it down. Former city planner Travis Henley brought residential CZ forward in 2023 as a planning tool for Southport to be able to work with developers to the town's greatest advantage. We had many educational sessions on CZ, and there was a lot of public outcry about, quote, allowing unchecked development, unquote, though we felt it was somewhat misinformed and not correct. Implementation of CZ in residential areas gives municipalities the potential of more leverage, more control than does nothing. The planning board of that day came to understand the usefulness of CZ and voted unanimously to recommend its adoption to the aldermen so that the city could work with developers rather than in so often adversarial relationships. I will say that for me, still believe, as I did in 2023, that CZ is a valuable and correct planning tool for ours and any town. Cohesive, what it should be utilized for is making the town better, cohesive, contributory, especially at the scale we're discussing tonight. Southport missed its chance to get this right before this development rounded back to us a second time. Again, we're chasing our tails. What the planning board recommended before was, wait for it, strategic planning, readying Southport for the future. But it was at that time latched onto and twisted for political reasons that year. CZ became considered the spawn of Satan in 2023. Interim Manager Theron pushed CZ to a vote for the planning board at 2023's end. It became a political dagger and the deciding factor for the 2023 election. Now, almost embarrassingly, it's back with this developer's return of waterway to us. Oddly enough, what was touted before as terrible and runaway development could, more realistically, be just what Southport needs. CZ may end up being a real win for us, the savior of Southport. As a planning board, as a town, we want to get this right. We want to work with developers for Southport's overall good. So what's the difference between 2023 and 2025? I can tell you, the loss of the ETJ last year has made for an altogether different world now. Bald Head Limited and East West as developer now function under county rules. And they've already gotten approval from the county for the waterway housing unit number 1100, with a potential for around 2,000, I think I saw. So for a reality check, think about this. This number is close to a 2/3 increase of Southport's current 2,100 units. East West has appeared, basically and rightfully, I add, saying we're presenting what we'd like to see. And without agreement, our annexation into Southport won't happen. Without our enacting residential CZ earlier, Southport has much less to say in this matter now. Understand that all we have any real significant say-so even now is the 47.61 acres around the marina, what is actually in the city limits. With everyone's indulgence, I don't want us to stop discussion at the conclusion of Mo's text amendment presentation. I want us to move straight on into item 2, the rezoning application, because that application and the development agreement that's been distributed are very much intertwined with the text amendment application. Mo was actually on this planning board when the original Indigo Phase 2 discussions came through, and then a staffer when CZ was introduced. So Mo, add anything to my stroll down memory lane that you want to add tonight before moving right on into what we've just in the last few days been brought to us in these applications and the development agreement. So Mo, we will turn it over to you, girl.
If I may, Madam Chair, a point of clarification.
Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure that we're going down the right path, because if I remember correctly, there were 4 aldermen and a mayor that rode each other's coattails into office on the no, we will not negotiate. And not only will we not negotiate, it was heck no, we won't negotiate. And it was a big campaign promise. So are we wasting our time? Because if we do all this work, the aldermen once again going to say we're not doing conditional zoning, or has there been a change of heart? I haven't seen anything that's come out from the Board of Aldermen saying this, but have they changed their minds? Is anybody aware of that? Are you aware that have they provided direction that they want to do this?
I have to present this information because it's
Yeah.
an applicant that has
Right.
proposed this.
Yep.
I don't have full understanding of exactly what the aldermen, but we have been in discussions. Yes.
Okay, so if we do all this work, we're not just barking up a tree. The aldermen are actually looking to it. And I'm not trying not to put you on the spot, but I just want to make sure we're not wasting everybody's time to have the same thing happen again that happened a year and a half ago. I mean, there were campaign promises made. I just want to make sure I understand this, that things have changed. And I suppose that's rhetorical, and I guess we'll find that out. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you so much, Chair Hodgen and members of the Planning Board. This text amendment is to section 2.11, conditional rezoning. Where? Oh, thank you. This is an applicant-initiated text amendment, and per section 210 of the UDO, the alderman, the planning board, city administration, or the owner or an agent can initiate a zoning text amendment. So just a quick overview of the process. The application is submitted and accepted by staff. Upon review, they will send the text as well as some updates or any thoughts from the staff to the planning board for a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen. Then there will be a public hearing and the Board of Aldermen have the final decision of the text amendment itself.
Mo, can I,
Yes, ma'am.
can I clarify the public hearing that's initiated by the Board of Aldermen set that public hearing,
That's
right?
correct.
That's not us.
That is not at the planning board
Okay.
level. Yes, the public hearing will be set and prior to the hearing or prior to the decision of the Board of Aldermen at one of their meetings. You're welcome. So what is conditional zoning? So Chapter 160D 703 provides the type of zoning districts that can be included to carry out the statutes and local ordinances. Those include the conventional zoning, conditional zoning, form-based zoning, and overlay zones. Conditional zoning is the process where the zoning designation of the property is petitioned by the applicant or property owner to allow very specific uses with conditions that are agreed upon between the developer, the property owner, and the local government. So we have to, and then the local government is able to consider the impact of those uses on the surrounding areas and send comments to the developer or the applicant. So conditional zoning is very site specific. It site-specific projects for approval for construction. It is not a citywide zoning district that can be applied anywhere. So individual specific development conditions are imposed per application. So conditional zoning itself is a process that is allowable, but each conditional zoning district within the city would then become its own district and not similar to like an R10. It's very site specific, very development specific.
Which is why in these tables that are included in the application, there's a column for CZ-1 because it's specific to this application.
That's correct. Yes. So what is conditional zoning in, excuse me, Southport today? And the chair mentioned it before. We do have conditional zoning, but it can only be requested if you are in non-residential zoning districts. So this includes the office and institutional, central business district, highway commercial, and we currently do not have any light industrial or high industrial zoned lands. Conditional zoning districts must be tied to an existing zoning district. So it would be a conditional BD zoning. And the applicant must use the dimensional standards and use allowances. So any uses have to only the ones that are allowed within the, let's say BD, are allowed to be the uses requested by the applicant. So I did want to say that it cannot be initiated in open space or in the PUD zoning districts at this point because they both will allow, well, obviously for the open space, those are specific for our natural resources and public resources. And then the PUD allows for residential uses and also is very site specific as well with a site plan approval for the PUD itself. So as we mentioned in 2023, staff did bring forward an amendment that would include residential zoning and would lessen the restrictions for standard allowances. So the original proposal did allow the applicant to come forward with their dimensional standards that were not carried forward from the existing zoning district. So they could propose anything they wanted as long as staff and the developer or the applicant would then agree upon those standards. Then I won't go into, but again, yes, we had a lot of numerous public meetings, town hall meetings, small group meetings, added updates to the text amendment to kind of find common ground for everyone to come to agreement with conditional zoning, but it was not adopted by the Board of Aldermen. So that's where we are now. So that is what conditional zoning is in Southport, kind of a history of a little history and kind of building on what the chair had brought forward as well. So what is different now? While this is an applicant proposal, staff does support the amendment because of a couple things that have happened. We had House Bill 911, which removed our extraterritorial jurisdiction from the city of Southport. So the loss of the city's ETJ is also the loss of the zoning jurisdiction in that land. So then now all of the land that is adjacent to the city that was the former ETJ is under county development regulations, and their regulations are very different in character than Southport's development. The next one is the Senate Bill 382, which limits the authority of local governments in North Carolina for downzoning and nonconformities. No local government can initiate a downzoning. This is for a code amendment or a map amendment. And what does that mean? You can't decrease the density of any uses. You can't change the uses, reduce the number of uses, and you cannot create any nonconformities in those areas. So this hinders the locals' ability to update the code or mapping as necessary when there are different development demands or impacts that are being seen. So that is really an issue. We have heard and talked to other governments that in North Carolina that conditional zoning is a really wonderful tool to help guide through this when you have projects that are, high level of, they're going to be built, and also they want to be able to make sure that they get the conditions that they need, even though they can't bring in new code per se. So they can come together, get what the city needs, as well as allow some different changes for the applicant itself. So I will go through kind of an outline of the proposed text amendment. So the purpose is essentially the same. It does not change much. It just changes kind of the format of it. So this is the zoning districts allows zoning regulation to be imposed upon the adopted to particular site and its context and anticipated impacts of the future development. Then the conditional zoning district requirements that they are outlined is no conditional zoning shall be considered within the open space zoning district. So that stays the same. And then the dimensional standards with the proposed conditional zoning district shall be designated by the applicant and set forth as in Appendix A in the submittal requirements, So this is where it takes away the requirement that the new conditional zoning has to be linked to an existing zoning district. So that allows you to have truly a very unique zoning district for your site. The next couple parts, application and conditional zoning review procedure. It's very similar. It has to follow the outline of section 210 of the UDO. That is for any map or text amendment existing now. So it's the same process as this text amendment would be coming through, or any other map amendment. You would bring it in. The application would come into staff, go to the planning board for recommendation, a public hearing at the Board of Aldermen level, and then the Board of Aldermen would then make the final decision on that. And applications will have to give the overview of the property and have a master development plan must be submitted as part of this. And that will include both a map and also a narrative that outlines the uses and the dimensional standards that the applicant is requesting. And this would be what is in the packet that you've got forward, and that's in Appendix A too. So that's going to be a lot of the very specific requirements that they had. So a lot of the detailed verbiage that was in the conditional zoning that we have now, a lot of it is process and a lot of it is found in Appendix A, or is this within our administrative uses. So I want to reiterate that all processes are required and review procedures are still required. So this master development plan does not take the place of a major subdivision plat or a major site plan review. So while they get this rezoning, it is strictly that. It is a rezoning that gives you the standards for that zoning district, but then they would still have to come forward. Let's say if this is a mixed use, they would come forward with their major subdivision plat because they need to subdivide their property because they're recombining it, then they would go through the same process of then the planning board would get to review that against the standards that they have proposed and been approved and the conditions that everyone has signed off on. Then it would go to the Board of Aldermen for, excuse me, their final approval of that next process. So it still is a two-step process as if any other zoning amendment that would take place. So let's say I had a piece of property, it's BD, I wanted to rezone it to HC, it was approved. I still have to go forward and get all of my development approvals and building permits, even though I've gotten this zoning change. So that part does not change it. So then the applicant proposed text amendment. The next part is Appendix A. Currently, Appendix A is a chart. It's hard to follow. It's hard to read. This was part of the amendment that staff had brought forward with conditional zoning in the last couple of years. The applicant had made a couple changes to that conditional zoning requirements. So we are including this change as part of it. So it updates the entire Appendix A to allow the outline of what is required for all submittals as part of this text amendment, including the text that the applicant requested. And their requests were to remove the dimensional standards of height by number of stories. It's just going to be by feet. And then going the boundaries by, apologize, let me get that exact verbiage. I had it. There were just two small changes on that one. So they were removing that the boundaries must be described by bearing and distance where they do not follow described boundaries. So they still have to have all of the boundaries proposed on the site, but they just don't have to describe it in the submittal for their conditional rezoning. So that was the two changes on Appendix A there that they required for the land use or the conditional zoning submittal portion of that. So opportunities. There are some opportunities with this and why this is something that we are supporting and staff is supporting because there have been so many changes and this was a process that staff was behind a couple years ago. We are definitely still behind it. I think it's something that the city is missing as a tool to be able to guide quality developments. We want to have flexibility and consistency with our land use plans and also be compatible with other uses and developments within the vicinity, but also allowing some different things to happen. So now the allowances are restrictive and to realize the benefits of the conditional zoning, we need to be able to have an agreement with the applicant, the city, and come to some agreements there. The other one is there's very little incentive for applicants to undertake this process currently. Why would an applicant spend the money and the time and the process, just the process itself is time consuming, when by right, they could go in, build on their property using the standards and uses that they're required to use anyway. So why go through all the extra steps to have the exact same uses that they can only use within their existing zoning and this dimensional standards? So that is one other consideration. And then a lot of people are saying, why not the PUD? So there are deficiencies. There are lacking the ability to meet the smart growth principles that are found in the land use plan. A lot of people in our new land use plan, as we were going through it, cluster developments, smart growth techniques, green toolbox ideas are in there. So there are things within our current land use plan as well as the new one that is moving forward that are very in line with this type of text amendment. So we want to have those small lot developments so we can reduce the impacts on the environment. Right now, if a PUD is 60%, your lot can only be so small. So you might have to build, and we try to get people to move around and not be in part of the wetlands, but it may not be an option. So we don't have any tools to say, hey, let's let you have your lots a little bit smaller, but save this isolated wetland over here that's not jurisdictional, but still important to the habitat and the environment in that area. So those are some of our opportunities we have. So that was just those were the outline of what the applicant had requested and what conditional zoning is. So they've left it pretty much basically the applicant is allowed to propose their uses, their standards, and follow, as long as they're following our process in 210, as well as the outline in processes for 160D. So those are, and as requested by the chair, unless there's any questions now, I will just keep moving forward. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to point out that in this process that we will require the applicant to have a public input meeting
Yes, thank you.
in this because that's important, I think,
Yes.
for the public to understand what the devil's going on. when
Thank
one of
you.
these
Yes,
comes
that
in.
was one of the main things that I missed. Yes, so prior to the public hearing that is required by the applicant, they must have a public input meeting that they schedule, they coordinate, they invite the public, they get input on the project themselves, and then they have to put together a report and bring it to staff so that the Board of Aldermen can use that as part of their consideration as well. Thank you for that.
Madam Chair, I've got a question, a couple if I could, through the chair. Mo, can conditional zoning be done on a single residential lot? I'm thinking of, could
Right.
somebody circumvent the Board of Adjustment instead come in for a conditional zoning change on one lot?
Yeah, as this is written, yes, they could. They could.
All right, thank you.
And mind you, though, they still would have to, while they may not have to go to the Board of Adjustment for variance, they still would have to come through as a map amendment with all of the uses that they would be allowed, standards, setbacks. Then they would also have to hold a public input meeting. So it's a lot more steps than just trying to get a variance from a setback or height or something from the Board of Adjustment.
So they would still have to also go through the Board of Aldermen for approval as well.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So this is a much more public process than going through the Board of Adjustment.
Absolutely, yes.
Could they still go through the Board of Adjustment if they were denied the conditional zoning?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I'm just curious. I'm just not understanding.
If
Yeah,
the
I'm new
only
to
reason
this,
they
so I
were
want to
going
make sure I
through-
understand.
yeah.
I just want to make sure I understand the process, the ins and outs, and what can happen. Thank you.
And I don't see this as an alternative to the Board of Adjustment in any way. The Board of Adjustment is there for very specific
Sure.
things. These are for much more detailed and bigger type developments. I'm not saying it couldn't happen on a pocket of land that's smaller, but for a single family use on a small lot, I think that wouldn't be the avenue just because of the time, the money, and the reason that the conditional zoning really exists.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the answer.
All right. No further ado, I will keep moving on. All right, so before I start into the tree application, I wanted to kind of give a historical overview of the property and where it's been, where it's gone, where it's coming, where it's going, so that to benefit the new members of the planning board, I do want to caveat that this is not part of the application. It's not part of the application review in any way. It's really just making sure that the history of this whole project comes through as you're looking at the pieces that are part of the application that are only existing within the city's property limits now. So this is the master development plan that was submitted in 2021 and then proposed to the Board of Aldermen and Planning Board in 2022. So this is the full project from Bald Head Limited and East West Partners for what is now two separate pieces of the property. This was all within Southport's planning jurisdiction. The large piece above the 320, approximately 327 acres is that you'll see in the different colors with the yellows and oranges and greens and reds. And then if you look towards the south of the property with the purples and some of the reds, that's what's in the city area, in the city jurisdiction. So this was all one large project that was brought forward. They were looking for approximately 1,500 dwellings and 80,000 square feet of non-residential uses. So that was the original, as Chair had mentioned, it brought forward and it was then withdrawn. Fast forward to the loss of RETJ, and the applicant went to the county for their approval of their planned development. And this is the master development plan that is approved by the county now. So the planning board made their final decision. They are the final decision maker on their plan developments at the county level. So this is approximately 327 acres. They are going to have a proposed 1,100 dwelling units, 100,000 square feet of non-residential uses. So this is the new master development plan for what is within the county jurisdiction that is adjacent to now our city limits. And I'll be using this more than once, but this is the master development plan that was included in this packet that is for this proposal, specifically for this conditional zoning. And it includes some areas around the marina and some vacant parking lots and some other vacant land adjacent to the county property to the north off of 9th Street. So that this is the new proposed for the city property. So if you'll remember the two, so that was all one, the county's approval, and now what is coming forward for the cities. So this is our conditional zoning map amendment. Again, it is an applicant-initiated zoning amendment that's going to be R10 and PUD to conditional zoning CZ01. So if you will, here is the zoning map. We've got a zoning PUD. PUD is the purple and the R10 is the yellow. And then the future land use map shows now that they are medium density residential. And in the new land use plan, it is a traditional neighborhood, and then marina commercial, or marine commercial are the two different future land use map zonings for those. So the proposal includes 19 lots within the city's corporate limits for a total of 47.61 acres. Again, zoned R10 and PUD. Here is a vicinity map. So this shows your vacant land is shown in red. That is part of this proposal. There is a portion off of 9th Street that will be accessed from the county portion of the project. There's another parking lot that is vacant off of Indigo Plantation Drive, kind of in the middle of the subdivision. And then as you get to the southern end of the subdivision, you've got the Marina Village area, which is going to be the marina, and another vacant parking lot, which they would like to also include in this. So this is kind of showing you the vicinity to Indigo Plantation subdivision, as well as the city proper as well, as you see the downtown on that map. This is another vicinity map, a little closer, just to kind of give you an idea of how it fits into Indigo Plantation itself, where you'll see the existing R20 and townhomes that exist in Indigo Plantation, with the pink being the properties that are included in this request. So this map also outlines the wetlands and flood zones, as well as the property maps. I would like to state on the map that states that the blue line is a floodway, and that is not correct verbiage. It is actually a flood zone. It's a differentiation between two flood zones. So that's the Velocity 13 and then the AE 11. So that is not a floodway. There's not a floodway on this property. Just want to keep the vernacular correct, because that means a lot, two separate different things. As you know, the applicant is required to submit the master development plan that shows the permitted uses with standards and conditions. So this, as you have in your packet, is the master development plan with the bubble diagrams of the neighborhood uses. And this accompanies the narrative that was also in the application in your packet as well. Area A, which is the purple piece down, is the Marina neighborhood. And this is going to be essentially a non-residential area with up to 10,000 square feet of non-residential uses. But they could include some mixed uses with some upper level residential as well mixed in with that. But it's essentially going to be retail, restaurant, and possibly a clubhouse in that area. Moving upwards, just north of the marina to the left in the red is your waterfront village. And this is going to be strictly multifamily structures in that area. And this waterfront village is a 4.5 acres with a maximum of 160 units. And then as you move further north, there are several different orange pockets, and those are going to be your residential village areas. Those all add to 21.1 acres. They're going to be approximately 39 units in those different areas. And that'll be a mix of townhomes, duplexes, and single family homes in those areas. And
How many in all those, you gave a number of how many units in all of those areas combined?
it's going to be 199.
199.
199 is the total, and 10,000 square feet in non-residential for those areas. So if you'll notice, the higher intensity uses are going to be focused around the marina. And as you move northward towards the residential portion of the subdivision of Indigo Plantation and around 9th Street, those will become more residential at a less intensity. So the following slides, I'll go into detail of the submittal of the narrative with the dimensional standards and their conditions. So this map, just to kind of outline is the dimensional standards. It gives the definition of density. They're using gross density as their definition. So this is the number of units for the whole of all the property. Doesn't remove anything. It's just, all of the property border lines and property lines are included as that. So the residential density they're saying is a maximum of 4.2 dwelling units or 199 units. So that'll be found within the whole. So there will be clusters where there will be a higher density overall in that one section, but the whole, as a whole, and with all of the property, the 47 acres, it will be 4.2 units per acre. They're not counting accessory dwelling units as density or a number of dwelling units permitted. And that's pretty basic language. We have that same in our UDO now. That is not considered part of your density.
And now help me remember, and I don't know if it's something that's already been passed or if it's one that you're going to talk to us about later on tonight, about ADUs being just kind of carte blanche.
Yeah, so that is one of the bills that is being considered now. And it would allow an accessory dwelling unit to be allowed, as long as you still would have standards you could meet, setbacks, height, and different size even, that you would just be able to go get your building permit. You would need a special use permit for it. You would be allowed to rent it long term. And it wouldn't have to be connected to the home itself. So those are the differences to what we have. This development and proposal will not allow any short-term rentals within the development. So that is not something that would be used for. That would not be a use. You're welcome. And then the non-residential intensity would be a maximum again of 10,000 gross square feet of primary uses on the property themselves. The next is the dimensional requirements for the lot sizes that are proposed. So we've got our single family, we've got single family alley loaded, we've got duplexes, multifamily, and then our non-residential mixed use that are on this table. And what I would like to state that I didn't put in this presentation just for brevity, there is a list of uses in your packet that is an outline of the table of uses in the UDO now. And it outlines exactly the uses that are allowed or being proposed for this district itself. it follows and mirrors the PUD uses one for one. So anything that is allowed in a PUD zoning district now, they are including in the CZ1 as their allowed uses. So that includes accessory uses, residential uses, and then non-residential uses as well. So to give you that background. So this shows you that the lot widths, the heights, the setbacks, they're going to have front setbacks of 10 feet, side yards of 5, and rear of 10. They are proposing a max height for single family homes at 40 feet with a multifamily allowance for 45 feet if they are within the flood zone. So that would be all of the multifamily that is found in the Marina Village and I apologize, the waterfront village. So that would be in the, those are specifically within the flood zone. So they would be allowed to be built because they have to be elevated to meet the flood zone itself.
I'm sorry.
No,
I didn't
please,
mean to
please.
interrupt you. It's better for me for my notes
Yeah.
just to ask as we're going through it. Why did this height require what they want for height? Why did this change from the original application that came in? And I'm looking at this for multifamily, if there's a pitched roof.
Right, yeah, I hadn't gotten that far, yes.
Oh, okay. But do you know why it changed from the original? Just because they could?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I didn't compare this to the original application. This is a completely new application. I don't know the changes other than I'm sure this helps with the having to elevate it, especially in the Marina Village area and the waterfront village. It's going to be the velocity zone, so they can't put anything underneath the home that is usable other than parking. So you can't have any storage, you can't have anything else but an open space under your home at that point.
Okay. Go ahead and then I'll get back.
No
to the
worries.
other.
So yes, there is a caveat that if there's a pitched roof for the multifamily structures, that they could go to 55 feet. That's
Which is 5 feet higher than the marina buildings, folks, is what I just want to point out. We continue to go up when everybody was so appalled by those marina buildings when they came in, but we're going higher than that now. And we have 40 feet now, but this is disturbing that we're inching up from there. And I'd point out Bald Heads, I think, is 35 feet maximum over there. Just point of information.
Thank you. No worries. The next design piece of the dimensional standards is, as noted in their plan, the most northern residential village, which is off of 9th Street, or just above 9th Street, that is connected directly to the county portion of the project, is going to be considered for cluster design. So this is a smaller area, so they want to be able to have a smaller lot size, cluster, and allowed to have the perimeter and less impact on the surrounding neighbors. So that would be a height of 35 feet with a max floor area of 2,500 square feet for those properties.
And Mo, is that 6.7 acres that's designated towards the top of this
Yes, ma'am.
RZ3 map?
Yes,
That's going to be cluster.
that's going to be designated as cluster design,
Okay.
correct?
All right. And maybe you'll get to this later on, but I want us to address how all of these different areas, how they get out, where their traffic
Okay.
comes out on, and I'm sure that's later
Well,
on.
if you want to, we can speak of that right now. That's
Okay.
fine. I didn't
Okay.
really go into that too much. If you go to your main master development plan, as you can see, you will see the round dots with arrows on the map. So the traffic will be coming in either from 9th Street around there. The circle dot kind of in the middle, which is going to be close to probably the townhome area of the development now existing in Indigo. There will be an opening to the main development there. So that would be headed up into the county portion. And in the cluster, in the most northern portion of that residential, that would be only accessed from the county portion of the development itself.
They will not be able to get out via 9th Street.
They are not
from that.
proposing that.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so the next standards that they have proposed are parking standards and pedestrian facilities. On this map, they've designated 2 of the areas as city parcels, and then the red portion that is considered the marina parcel. So they have some different parking thoughts for both the city and the marina itself. So they've outlined the minimum parking spaces for each of their uses for the residential, and then kind of the big, they're considering retail, restaurant, and office as their big uses for the marina area. So that's what they have outlined here. So they're saying 2 spaces for each single family home, 1 space for 1-bedroom duplexes, 2 spaces for 2 or greater bedroom units for the 2-family accessory dwelling units. There's what they're calling a non-junior and a junior. So they're requiring a 1 for the non-junior and no spaces for the junior.
And I'm going to ask what the difference is.
Yes, so the non-junior is going to be detached on its own, and then the non-junior or the junior itself is going to be attached like a frog or a smaller unit that is not over the garage. Dwelling unit multifamilies, we've got 1 space per bedroom unit, 1-bedroom unit, and 1.4 spaces for 2+ units. Retail sales, 3 spaces per 1,000 square feet. Office general, we've got 3 spaces per 1,000 square feet. And for restaurants, we've got 4 per every 1,000 square feet.
Which is kind of mind-boggling.
It's a lot different, yes, than what we require now. So the office spaces are very similar. So that's kind of on pace. The retail, if you break it down, their proposal would require 6. Let's say we're looking at a 2,000 square foot property. 6 would be proposed in this scenario where we would require 10 spaces. And then the restaurant, they would need 8 spaces, and we would require 20 for this.
So that's quite a difference.
Yes.
I was thinking, the St. James population and Boiling Springs all use us. We keep talking about
Right.
that. We're the living room, right? So for me, it's important for the developer to consider how many will come. If they've got what we hope will be nice shops,
Sure.
nice restaurants, folks are going to come over there. So are they going to be all of a sudden in the same position that we're finding ourselves in? There's nowhere for these people to park.
There may not be, but I think that with these the reduction in the parking for this area is the anticipation that the majority of the people visiting these spaces are going to be from the development itself. They're going to be riding their bikes. They're going to be using golf carts. They're going to walk. So that it's not going to be as many people from that neighborhood so much as people that are coming in. So there may be an issue, but again, that will be, how they would like to structure this.
And not our issue. Correct.
So anyway, they would also offer the caveat that in the marina area, which is the area with the red boundary, that they could provide a parking study that if they are conducted by a qualified engineer, they can recommend parking standards that may be substituted from what is listed above to show that what they actually may need, or other projects that are similar that have shown that need a different type or different number of spaces required for the area. They do require pedestrian facilities. They can be on public or private right-of-way. They can be impervious or pervious materials.
Mo, can you
Yes,
just
ma'am.
back up a little bit and describe that? If it's on private property, is that the HOAs?
Yes,
or
so that-
DOA's open space?
That could be
there?
part of the open space. Let's say they have a multi-use trail that is within vicinity of the roadway that could be considered part of the sidewalk itself. That could be considered their facilities rather than having to install a true sidewalk itself. You're welcome. And again, that also is stated in section C. They're saying that they only need to be on one side of street as allowed now in our UDO at 4.11. And then where they're saying where there is a multi-use path, they can use that as their requirement. And then again, where there's permanent open spaces located on one side of the street, it can be shown on the plan and used as their pathway. The last standards that they have provided in their narrative include landscaping and buffers and recreation and open space. Landscaping and buffers, you'll see on the map in this slide. The areas that are delineated in the dark green will include a 30-foot wide buffer with a 60% opacity. And that would be provided in any of these areas. So that's also the county portion of the project as well as the city properties. They will also be making sure that where they can't have a full buffer yard, they will be adding some evergreens in because they want to try to keep the existing vegetation where possible to meet this requirement. And if not, they will add to that. They're also going to be putting a buffer yard around jurisdictional wetlands. So with a minimum average width of 20 feet to help protect those jurisdictional, those are the 404 wetlands. And lastly, the recreation and open space, they're going to be required a 20% open space, so they will provide that. And they will include the wetlands, the floodplains, as well as the marina basin, as they have outlined. So currently, we do not allow jurisdictional wetlands within our calculations, but we would include any other wetlands as well as floodplains in our calculation.
So that's a difference that they're proposing to use the jurisdictional in open space. Did I hear that wrong?
No, that's correct.
Okay. So
Now they haven't specified, and that's one thing we could ask because it just says includes wetlands. Now, since previously they spoke about jurisdictional wetlands and regular, I'm making that assumption when I read this that it would include all of that, especially since they're using the marina basin as part of their calculation as well. Yes.
right, because
So it's going to be just the gross property itself.
that's a significant calculation for the marina area, I think. And ours in our UDO, and I think you pointed this out already, non-contiguous open space, this is in page 4-11 of ours, for open space. Non-contiguous open space shall not account for greater than 50% of the required allocation. This is a significant difference, I think, for what we're taking more care than this is. Just point of clarification on that. Okay, thank you.
Now I have blown through this, I know, but I know there's a lot of questions too. So I wanted to hit the basics. I wanted to make sure that what they are proposing was out there. This is, like I said, this is only for those 19 parcels within the city limits. And it includes around the marina and the vacant parking lots. And then that one pocket of vacant land that is contiguous to the county project itself.
I can't be the only one that has questions going through all of this.
Madam Chair.
I've got a couple.
Go ahead, John.
Does staff consider the application from Waterways complete?
For a zoning application, yes, and they have met the requirements for the master plan, and they will be providing a public input meeting prior to the public hearing. That will be part of their process. So yes, they have a full application.
Okay. And this is a comment and a question, but what problem is conditional zoning meant to solve? If you read all of your hard work, you can get that information, but as you know, most people aren't going to do that. Could staff put together one or two sentences, almost like a marketing campaign for this is what we're intending to do with conditional zoning, and this is how it would benefit us? Because again, people take conditional zoning and kind of take it their own direction, maybe without the benefit of reading 192 pages.
Would you like me to do this now?
Oh, no. No, tomorrow morning's fine. Tomorrow morning's fine. Now, I would say, as we come up with a recommendation as a
Of
board,
course.
if we could have that, again, it's not part of the formal text, but it is kind of a preamble, Sue, that maybe we could put into a report that says,
I think that's a really good idea, John. Mo and I had already talked about putting in some information out on the city website about this. So maybe that could be an introductory or an explanatory statement from staff to help folks that don't understand this, have not been involved in all the prior information and application, and just kind of giving a big overview for what you've done so well here for all of us. So maybe that's something we can include there. Larry, did you have something?
I do. You've done a nice job with the presentation, everything you put together. It's a tremendous amount of work, and thank you. So, and I guess I'm thinking of, through the chair, of course, originally they asked for 1,500 dwelling units. What was allowed at the time of that 1,500? And that was under conditional zoning if it was passed, correct?
That they were trying to do that through a PUD.
Through a PUD.
Yes, sir.
And what was allowed at the time?
I don't know.
Okay.
Again, I didn't go back to the old application. I didn't do any of that research
Okay.
because this is a completely different request.
Yeah.
The portion of the county is already completed or
Okay.
approved.
Yep.
So yes, it is part of the conversation. I don't disagree with that,
Yeah.
but what we have before us now are the parcels in the city that will work with the county property itself, but we've got to see what we can do, how it fits in with the city
Yeah,
here.
nope. And I understand. What I'm trying to learn is under the former ETJ, what was allowed, and now they passed 1,100 through the county. So I'm curious to know how much would have been allowed in the former ETJ as to what was passed by the county, as well as with 199 that we have in Southport. Under non-conditional zoning, how much would be allowed? So you see what I'm saying? I'm trying to do a table of doing all the math and seeing what was allowed, what was requested, what was allowed then, what was allowed in the ETJ, what was allowed in Southport, what was approved by the county, two of those different. So I'm trying to understand, have the numbers flex that much, or are we still looking at about basically the same thing?
So are you asking for the project at a PUD conditional zoning for the whole project, not the previous zoning district? Are you looking at the
Well,
previous zoning
I guess what I'm
district?
trying to understand is the public's going to say they're asking for 199. What's allowed normally under regular zoning? And the same thing goes with if we had the ETJ. And maybe it doesn't matter because it's in the county now, but I guess from my own knowledge, I'd like to know what was allowed in the ETJ, what was approved by the county, because it's no longer the ETJ. So I'm just trying to understand how these numbers are flexed, how they've changed, and what the math works out to be.
Let me get back to you on those.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, it doesn't have to be done tonight. Certainly, thank you. How much do we have in the say over this? Because I'm concerned about the heights. When you go down and you look at the height of the marina, and if that is that only being proposed in Southport, or is it part of the county as well, or have they already approved it?
I don't know what the heights are that were approved. I'm not sure if they were from the county side because they have very different, again, regulations. They have not gone through a subdivision with them, so I don't know what they've approved.
Okay.
What they're proposing for us is just for, for those multifamily properties.
And it's only multifamily, no single residential.
That's correct.
Thank you for now.
And do we have an idea, Mo, for those multifamily units? What was the number that they were proposing for multifamily?
For the waterfront village, we're looking at maximum of 160 units.
And then there's parts in here that talk about workforce housing. And I don't like that phrasing. I told you that the other day. It sounds like something out of WPA to me. But help everybody understand where those are proposed and how many units they're talking about for that.
That is part of the development agreement. That is part of this, but not part of this application. If they are proposed, it would be in the rental areas. They have not designated what would or could be rental or where these would be located in the project itself.
And in statute, the way that was formed, what passed, I think, last year for workforce housing, it only has to stay designated as that for a certain amount of time, and then it changes into regular housing without, basically, it looked like a tax credit to me, an easy tax credit for builders.
The one I found said it have to be a primary use for 1 year.
1 year. Okay. All right. Thank you.
I have a couple questions for you, Mo. So is it my understanding, or is this correct, that Indigo is planning to annex the county part into Southport?
Yes, they are proposing to annex in with the development agreement as part of this whole project itself. So the development agreement includes the portion of the county, this portion, and once this is approved, comes together and the development agreement would then be approved, and then they would be they would be annexing in.
So if the conditional zoning and the Southport acreage were denied, is their annexation contingent
Yes.
on that?
Yes.
Okay. And then I thought I saw in the paperwork, all 199 pages of our packet, a mention of a 12th Street access.
There were some different in the TIA, the transportation improvement or analysis. I'm sorry, impact analysis. There were some different potential changes. That was not one of the recommended upgrades for the development itself. It was kind of one of those maybe down the road potentials. Yeah, okay. Another access off of a different road. So that is one that has been considered, but it's not required.
Okay, then lastly, do you have a handle on the total units for both components of the project? It seems like I thought I saw maybe as many as a couple hundred senior housing. Did you see that?
The care facility, as they mentioned, would not be considered as part of their density. So those would not be residential units.
Because it looked like some of those units could be standalone from what I saw, I think.
I've not seen any proposals for that project or that portion of the project, so I cannot answer that.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say reading it, it implies that some of them would be standalone. At least that's the way I read it.
Like a village around that continued care facility, is that right? Like we see in the step up communities now, something like that is what I imagined that would be. Mo, can you speak to how this annexation would actually roll out? And I know we're throwing a lot at you, if it's something, because we all got this very recently, and I will say that Mo is not, as she and I have talked, she had very little to do with the development agreement that we've all received the draft of. Just a couple things that, and I'll do much to her credit, that she went back and said, we have to have this in there. And that public meeting, input meeting was one of them. So if there's things that really you don't know, if we could maybe find that out, if somebody else has a better idea, if we need to go to the development attorney, or back to the applicant themselves to kind of get a handle on if it's done by the builder as areas are developed.
So and I know that there are still some things that the attorneys are working on, but the proposed is to have phases taken care of, final plat, installed infrastructure. That would be a final plat, and then brought into annexed into the city. Now, there are some little caveats that I am not comfortable speaking of, because I think that I do want to have some discussions with the attorneys, because they are very, very legalese. Like, there's a lot to it that I don't feel comfortable speaking on at this time.
If I could, Madam Chair. Quick question. Did you say they were going to use 9th Street, or they're not going to use 9th Street?
9th Street is the main entrance to Indigo Plantation as it exists, will remain.
Okay.
I think that the chair was asking where there were some properties bordering 9th Street on the upper level of where they're going to consider a cluster design. They haven't proposed an opening on 9th Street, so I can't speak to that. Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification. And it looks like most of this development is aimed towards Robert Rourke Drive, if I understand that correctly.
Yes, as I understand it, that's going to be the main entrance.
Okay. Do you know what the build out time is on this? Any idea?
I don't know. I know they are doing it in phases, so I would say 20 years.
Yeah.
That's what the original one was, that in the best of light,
Right.
that it would be 20 years before they'd be towed. And I guess that's, again, I mean, that's why several of us are thinking along the annexation, when and how much will this be profiting the city, as they talk about, we're going to increase your tax base, but, will we live to see that fully happen for the city? And I understand that's part of the marketing. Larry, did you get your answer?
I did. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Mo, there was a couple things I'm still looking at, these table of uses. Page 82 of our 199. It's page 16 of their application. Okay. There's a couple places like I highlighted fuel and ice dealers. We don't have standards on that now, right? So those would be developed, obviously.
Well, actually, I spoke with the applicant, and that was just a typo. And so that should just be permitted. So if it's permitted.
Gotcha. Okay. And I want to think there was one. Oh,
There was another one. So if there's one that says it's like there was one that needed a special.
vet services.
Yes, with the indoor kennels, that it still required a special use permit, but there were no standards for that.
Okay. So that'd be something that.
Yes, we'll get an update. Yes, we need to get an updated table.
And maybe you may have already answered this, since we have this agreement, until you get some clarification and feel more comfortable with that, would you rather us just not ask questions about that? I mean, we have it in our packets, and so I mean, we're not going to sit here and pick it apart. I mean, we have one attorney that could probably do that better than any of us could. But if we have questions in there that might help you get clarification, should we bring those up now so that we can address those
Either way
later?
you choose, you're welcome to bring them up now and I can reach back out to everyone or include them in our next packet. Meet with you if you'd like to sit down and go through it. There may be changes to this as well. So, this is a kind of a living document until it's signed. So I do want to mention that. So I can keep you abreast of what changes are happening.
Sure.
Absolutely. But
I'm kind of taking them at their word in their introductory thing when they say we're open and eager to begin a constructive dialogue. Okay, so we got questions. Let's dialogue here. So in that introductory part, that we talk, this is on the core value, continue to support a vibrant CBD. They talk about this in item 2. This, of course, is due to the second sentence, that third sentence, I'm sorry. Due to an influx of tourism, Waterway will not allow short-term rentals. Therefore, residents of the community will either be primary or second home owners. It is in this development agreement. I think I remember seeing that. No short-term rentals. That's going to be a hard no.
that is a hard no. That is, yeah.
Okay. And you're hitting the button. Go ahead.
Hey, Mo. Good evening. Great job tonight, Bo. And I'm trying to understand how this puzzle's working. As I understand, they're moving for this amendment for conditional zoning for our piece of the puzzle. Once we do that, that piece goes into the big puzzle, so to speak, and then that creates the annexation process. But they really don't want, they're saying we need this to be able to say we want to annex into Southport, correct?
As I read the development agreement.
Yes. And one of the things, and they can talk to the attorneys involved, but in the purpose in their application at 2.11 it says where appropriate, a development agreement may provide further certainty regarding any planned development project and greater flexibility than a planned unit development. Okay, we agree on that. But when you look at this agreement and they have the annexation zoning, the annexation part in 3.1, apartment's pretty easy. It talks about when the plat areas have been recorded, water and sewer has been installed. That's all objective. The city hires an inspector, that's objective. The next one, though, the parties have agreed upon a process by which permitting for vertical construction will be handled. What? That needs work. It's so vague. And does that go back when we talk about vertical construction? Are we talking about the height of the buildings? And why is it, you gave a great explanation of why when you're down in the wetlands, you have to elevate, so they want 45 feet. But why 55 feet for a pitched roof other than they want an additional story? And do we know how hard of a item that is? And does it matter overall with the design of the project?
I think it's pretty hard.
Okay.
I'm surprised the applicant didn't come tonight.
They chose not to come. They have the right to show up or not. Yeah.
Are we wasting the applicant's time? I want to go back to that again. Is this with certainty with the Board of Aldermen?
Yes.
So, I mean, they've done all this work. This applicant has spent all this money. Is this, again, it's rhetorical. I don't know. It's kind of like a little mind boggling that somebody would spend this money and that somehow there's been some handshakes somewhere along the way. Thanks, Madam Chair. I just haven't seen anything with the aldermen. I haven't seen anything on their agenda. And all of a sudden this is coming before us. And yeah, I'll try not to go down that road, but, and I want to go back to what Kevin was saying too about the height. So that it sounds like it's really a done deal. So there's, in some senses, there is no negotiation in conditional zoning. If you want
In
it
this
to be
budget.
annexed, if you want it to be annexed. If the city wants to be annexed, it's kind of here's what we have, this is our condition. So the conditions are really are by the applicant upon the city in order to get the annexation, I suppose.
I'll jump in and save you, Mo. Those are all, in a sense, political questions which are beyond her. I mean, there's been meetings. There was news about the unofficial meeting with Baldhead. It's quite some time ago. And, obviously there's been meetings because if they have a drafted and edited development agreement, obviously there's been a meeting of the minds. I think we're just a procedure. And so, Mo, I appreciate your hard work and everything you do to provide us information, but it's kind of, I'll step on the soapbox for 5 minutes with that until someone pushes my button. It was kind of like with us doing the courthouse building. The Board of Aldermen had already voted on it. Then they sent it to us to make a recommendation. And then we make a recommendation, but we're not allowed to present it to the Board of Aldermen or to the public for question and answering before the public. So it's kind of like, I guess we just got to talk to our liaisons more ahead of time and just figure out what's our role other than procedural, dotting your I's and crossing your T's. So that's my soapbox for tonight. Sorry, but it's nothing to do with your presentation.
I will say amen to much of that. Although I will also say this is not signed yet. Okay. So I think it is important still, much like the courthouse work, it's important still for us to put eyes on it for things that all whatever entities were involved, ever how many were involved in this, may not have thought about some of these things. Maybe they thought about every one of them. And as you say, they developed their hard nose to things. But there may be things that may yet be looked at again. I won't say I'm ever the optimist, but I think it's important. It is part of the process. So I think it's important for us to give a look. And as I said at the beginning, we're shining the light on this for the public. They've not seen any of this at all, unless they knew how to dig down in our planning board packet tonight. And I would note that the social media is crickets about this when they are usually very active about all of this. So they either got the high sign to not talk about it, or they've just not, I'm sorry, did I say that out loud? Or they're just not looked at it enough yet to be able to ask questions about it. But I do think it's important, like I did with the courthouse, we did, and I will say that again, we did valuable work on that courthouse proposal. We gave a quite valid alternative for the city. It was disappointing, but not unexpected what happened, since they had, as Kevin said, they already had a motion and to do what they ultimately did, and just kind of said pending planning board review. So it was not unexpected what happened there, but I think it does at least give opportunity, if somebody watches this tape, to say these were the things they were concerned about, and maybe we need to go back and see if that T needs crossing in there. And we will have again done our responsibility in all of this. So I think like I say, there are things in the agreement that I've got questions about, but I don't want to put you on the spot about that, Mo, because you've not been made aware or privy to all that. Maybe that's something that we can either just send you separate emails about so that you're able to ask those questions. Did anybody else have any questions for Mo? Thank you so much
I
for
have
what you've
one,
done. Go
just
ahead.
one last quick question about conditional zoning. So as you know, we're going through the UDO review process, and we're taking a look at the table of uses and how everything works, and there's already been a considerable amount of work done on that. With conditional zoning, under the table of uses, so once you set that, and we're doing a UDO review like we're doing now, you can't change any of those. If you wanted to change any of those, could you open that conditional zoning back up with the applicant again? Or is it like forever, speak now or forever hold your peace?
This is all brought forward by the applicant. So the applicant comes forward, says, I would like to do this for my project, very specific to that specific project only. If there are any deviations, modifications, they would have to come back forward in the same process that they did before. So they would have to bring it back as a new text amendment.
And it doesn't work in reverse. So if we wanted to change that, we can't do
No.
that. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for your patience too.
Mo, just, and with Alderman Foster and Latham, we thank the Board of Aldermen for the things they get right. Obviously, they put in so many hours. I don't think the public realizes the amount of hours they put in on things that they do get right. Some things are preconceived, and that's, potato. We all have different views. On this, I think the bottom line is the city wants the annexation. But how much can we negotiate? I guess that's up to the Board of Aldermen and the negotiating as far as some of these fine-tuned items. And that's for us to have a discussion, not so much with you, Mo, but contact members of the Board of Aldermen and the mayor and have frank conversations with them about concerns. So anyway, you did a great job.
My understanding is that the city had a separate development attorney for the drafting of that agreement. So I'll say again, for the involvement she had, Mo has done yeoman's work to stand in front of us and let us pound her with questions about all of this. So we are appreciative of that. This is a big deal. We have a 30-day, Mo, I'm correct in saying it's 30-day timeline from the time we get a text amendment application. They did pay for that, by the way, right? Because it wasn't noted on that form. I'm picky about that. Anyway, there is a 30-day timeline for, pardon? Okay, thank you. I asked these questions. But so we got 30 days to take action on this. We need to be expedient, but I still want us to be thorough and do the job that we're assigned to do. And is it from today, Mo, when it's formally presented, right? Thank you, Fred, for that. So what I'd like to ask is, what are your thoughts towards convening what I call a workshop after you've considered what's been presented tonight, or to bring in other questions, give Mo a chance to get some information on that drafted agreement maybe, and to facilitate the public's understanding about this all. Mo and I had talked about, as we mentioned earlier, putting something on the city website that has the information, maybe sans the agreement draft, and so that folks can send in comments or questions themselves that we might be able to address at the workshop if there's things that have been put in by the website, so that there is enough opportunity for public participation in all this before we get to the part after the CZ, if it's approved, before that public input meeting is in there. So Mo and I had already looked at calendars and identified Friday, May the 2nd that we could have this workshop so that we can do that public clarification on anything that came in. And I'm not talking about somebody putting a comment in saying, this stinks, I don't want it. If there's substantive information that we can help with, or do you feel that we've gotten sufficient information tonight and that we can simply table it for consideration, final discussion, and action at next month's meeting? Because we can do that and still be in the timeline, right, Mo? For us to be able to present our recommendation to the alderman, but we have to complete it in May if that's, if we're going to table it and take care of it, then we have to finish it in May.
Madam
What's your
Chair,
pleasure?
if we had a workshop, would it be appropriate for the city's development attorney to attend so we could ask questions directly if we have attorney-related questions?
I don't know about that. That's going to be a Mo has to find out kind of question, because he's in Greensboro, right? That firm is located in Greensboro. So I don't know if that could be worked out or not for that specific date. Other questions about that or other preferences? Go ahead, John. You had something else?
Well, I was just going to say, it seems like some of our questions about waterways, not necessarily the CZ text amendment, but the waterways related and how it could impact the text are more geared toward the legal agreement than setbacks and, things that city staff is pretty familiar with now. Unless we separate, if we don't talk about waterways during, this May 2nd meeting, then that would simplify things. I'm not sure that's the way the board wants to go.
What would anybody else say to that? Like I said to begin with, I consider it all intertwined at this point, because one's going to roll, and the CZ text amendment, if it rolls, then the other is just kind of the next wave coming to shore in it.
Madam Chairman, I think it'd be smart to have the May 2nd meeting, because we all have questions. There's more information Mo can get. And it is obviously an important decision. And I think the big picture is it's going to be the appropriate thing to do without making a final decision, but is it being presented in the best format? Meaning, is there any way possible? And I guess that's where we have to talk to the Board of Aldermen. And I don't know how you talk to a FaceTime or something with the attorney in Greensboro, but to understand the impact. And is this the deal? Because if they come back to us and say, this is the best deal we can negotiate, that's about, the bottom line is, if there's not going to be any movement, there's not going to be any movement by the developer. That's what I'd like to know. Because can we go back and say, okay, we don't like the pitch roof height, instead of 55, we want 45. The bottom, but it still goes up to the board, and the Board of Aldermen has the right to say, no, we want the 55.
And I think that, again, I think that's important for what we've done here tonight, to raise questions, because we're on tape. And Mo's made notes of all these things as we're going through, and can check that back to see about things that she can qualify whether or not there is wiggle room in any of this. I've kind of agreed to the point that we've been given a red line here, kind of like that is also the line in the sand. Pretty much it's done. And but it doesn't hurt to ask. All they can say is no, right? So voicing the concerns, I think, is important. I'm looking at Tori. I am sorry. Those M&Ms, girl, from the last meeting, I'm telling you, I keep thinking about those M&Ms. I apologize. I digress. So am I hearing consensus that pass him that water down? I have not used it. Oh, okay. I thought somebody needed water. We've had our water rationed to us tonight. Um, there's opinion on that too.
Bread
But
and water.
am I hearing consensus that the May 2nd meeting sounds appropriate to you? That we can go in that direction? Thank y'all.
Could,
Mo?
Let us get back to you when we find a space to make sure we have a space, and we'll get back to you. We can find the time.
That's true. We looked at calendar blocks. We didn't look at location and timing. Larry, you,
quick question. I know last week the Board of Aldermen set a policy without discussion about televising meetings. And I was surprised there wasn't even any discussion about, I'm sorry, I wasn't surprised there wasn't any discussion. But regardless, it didn't say a working meeting had to be televised, if I remember correctly. So can we make sure, is this going to be a working meeting or? Because either way, can we make sure it's televised as well?
absolutely. I would not have it any other way.
I know it might go outside of what they've set for policy, but I think we're better than that. So
I absolutely agree. We will have it recorded.
cool. Thank you.
Yes.
Madam Chair, Indian Trail is open all day. So whatever time would please the board.
And it has capacity to record there too. So what is your pleasure for a time? You want to do it in the morning? Can we do 10 o'clock, Mo? Can we go ahead and and we're specifying that it is a workshop? What's the board's pleasure? I don't want to make that decision. Are we going to receive public comment that day?
Yeah, I think why not? Well, that's me. Anyways, I would recommend, sure. I think absolutely. Love to
Okay.
hear it.
We don't want to be accused of not listening to the public. They will have opportunity to put comments on the website, but if that is okay with the rest of the board, we will also receive public comment that day, even though it's a workshop and it is not required. Okay, we've got consensus on that. Thank you, folks. I appreciate that. So Mo, since we're doing this workshop, then we don't have need tonight to have a motion to table this since we are further in that discussion that day, correct? All right, thank you so much. We do appreciate you, Mo. This is a lot for you to work on for us and for us to read 199 pages. We do appreciate you getting all this together. And as we ask for other things to be provided for us, that's very much appreciated. All right, folks, we are moving on now to item H, other business. Wendell, I'm sorry, you stood up, you sat down, you stood up, and you sat down again. So
Not a
you're
problem.
on.
Calling my exercise for the day, ma'am. All right. Well, good evening and thank you, Madam Chair and board members. I will try to keep this brief in effort for getting Mo out of here because quite frankly, she rocked it tonight, and I want to get her home. This evening's development review will consist of a recap of the March 25th Board of Adjustment meeting, a recently approved minor site plan, and a brief description of the April 22nd Board of Adjustment meeting. At the March 25th Board of Adjustment meeting, there were two cases heard and voted on. One, a special use permit, and the other, a variance request. Special use permit, SUP tag 25, tag 01, was a request for an accessory dwelling unit to be located at 218 West St. George Street. Basically, it's an ADU that's going to be on the second level of a detached garage. It's less than 530 square feet, and therefore it meets an exemption on setbacks. The variance request concerned two adjacent lots at the end of the Easton Street cul-de-sac. Essentially, the applicant, a developer looking to establish a Homestead Suites hotel, was requesting and granted relief from section 3.8.R of the UDO. The board found in favor of the applicant and granted the request. Now, this is going to be a major site plan. They have yet to drop their actual major site plan application, but when they do, and once we vet it, the findings of facts for this variance case, along with their application, will be forwarded on to you guys for a hearing.
Through the chair, where's that, please?
So this is going to be in the Dutchman Village development. So not far from Wilmington I, in that area.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, right off of J. Swain Boulevard. Thank you. Yeah. The variance request concerned, oh, I already read that. While I can answer any questions regarding the variance, I should note that this will be in the application for you guys. We don't have one yet, as I already mentioned. And I can move on from there unless there are specific questions that you would like to ask regarding the variance.
That's out Eason Street, help me, that's back at the credit union, right? State Employees Credit Union back in that area, back there.
Correct.
Going alongside the credit union, right, where that street goes into the woods right now? I'm sorry, M&Ms are in order there.
Yes. So right here, if you can see my, why is it not shining on? So it doesn't shine on the screen, but so what is connecting into the cul-de-sac is Eason Street. And Eason Street bisects J. Swain. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes.
And
now
J.
I got
Swain
you.
connects to 211, is it?
Let's go out a little bit.
Yeah. And then J. Swain also goes to River Mist, PUD. So that's where it's at.
Thank you. We can all take a ride around now and have visions. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
And the main variance is in the height, is that right?
So the variances from section 3.8.R, there's five subsections of that specific use standard. And two of those subsections concern major thoroughfare. And one's major thoroughfare, the other one is ingress, egress, and then the third one was height. Now, for the height one, all they had to do was get a letter from the fire chief saying that the fire chief, that Southport Fire can accommodate any issues, which that was obtained. The egress, ingress one was voted on in favor of saying that the board thought the board felt that it was appropriate size of an ingress egress for the proposal, but they recognize that the technical review committee and the planning board will still have final say over the development if ingress egress becomes an issue. And the same thing for the major thoroughfare. Yes, sir.
So what is the proposed height?
So the max height is going to be 50 feet, 2 inches. That's the very top of it. That's going to be for the penthouse of the, what they call is the penthouse, but it's really just the box for the elevator to recede into. The average height, I want to say, if I'm remembering correctly, it's going to be about 46, maybe 48 feet, something like that. I didn't even think to look at what that height limit was. It's been a couple weeks since I've had to look at it. But yeah, about 46 feet is going to be what the average height of the building will be.
Is it a chain hotel, something that we would recognize?
Homes 2 Suites, I want to say is owned by Hilton.
Home 2 Suites, is that
Home
right?
2 Suites.
Okay,
Yes.
gotcha.
So it is a chain hotel.
You had a photo of one. That might be helpful.
Pardon?
There was a photo of one up on the board,
Yes, sir.
like an elevation view. There you go.
This is a rough rendering of what they're proposing. All right. So we did approve a minor site plan this past week. The project is going to be called Sopo Social. It's a cafe, wine bar with a little bit of minor retail involved in it. The proposal is going to be developed at 724 North Howe Street, which, as we discussed last month, is really close to the ABC liquor store, Zone BD. It's a 2-story, approximately 4,500 square foot development, and they met all our requirements. And they should be getting their building permits in the very near future. April 22nd is Board of Adjustment, which I want to say is Tuesday. We'll be able to see 3 items. 2 of them will be special use permits, both for accessory dwelling units. And then the 3rd item will be Board of Adjustment training with Brady. And that concludes my presentation.
All right, thank you, Wendell. Does anyone have any other questions for Wendell? Thank you very much, sir.
Welcome. Thank you.
Mo, you're back up again for legislation. More legislation. Oh, boy, right?
I should have gone to law school.
And it's, this all
Instead of planning
starts,
school.
this all starts on page 177 of your packets and goes to the end.
Yes, so I just want to hit a couple of the top priorities that I think that the city is going to be facing with some of these bills. The League of Municipalities and the NC chapter of the American Planning Association have listed a few of their priority bills that have been coming forward. Again, these are the first filing of these bills, so they are going to be changed. They may die, they may morph into something completely different. So what I say here is, I'll definitely be bringing more of these updates to you to keep you posted on any changes. So you have the full packet. I don't feel like I need to go through every one. There were a couple. So Senate Bill 495 is the regulation on our accessory dwelling units. So currently in the city, accessory dwelling units are allowed in all residential zoning districts, but they are required to have a special use permit by the Board of Adjustment and meet the 8 criteria that are in the UDO. So they're a special use with standards, as it's said. Further, the Board of Adjustments regularly will put a condition on the approval that the ADU cannot be rented for long-term rentals. So this bill, there's also a House, let's see, there's the Senate Bill 495, and then there's a House Bill 627, which is also identical to that, which would allow an accessory dwelling by right. No special use permits would be allowed to be used for approval. They would just be administrative approval by staff. You can use some dimensional standards, as I mentioned earlier, so you could still have your setbacks, height limits, and sizes. But you would have to allow them to be rented long-term. They have not mentioned anything about short-term rentals. I believe that if we have a strong short-term rental ordinance, that would still be allowed to be used for this type of use, because we specifically say in our short-term rental ordinance that they cannot be in an accessory dwelling unit. So that's the big difference for us. So that would be administrative staff would be approving. They would just have to come in, get a building permit, make sure that they meet the standards, the new standards that we would have, or if they were the same, only not necessary for them to receive a special use permit. The next one would be Senate Bill 497, which is expand middle housing. So currently, single family residents are the only by right uses in our R10 and R20 zoning districts. Duplexes are allowed with a special use permit. This bill would allow multi-units. So you would have your duplexes, your triplexes, your quads. I think it went up to a 6 template. So it would be attached units. It would not be, I believe from what I can tell, and it might not necessarily be like it's not going to be like apartments, but it's going to be more of compatible with what fits in. So that's what the middle housing is. So the form and mass fits in with the character of the neighborhood, but allows more units within the dwelling itself. So that would become a by right in all residential zoning districts. You would not be able to regulate rentals, that you would have to allow long-term rentals in those. No fire sprinklers, so it couldn't be considered a commercial structure. And you wouldn't be able to determine that they needed extra size or location of parking spaces. So that was what I would like to caveat that with, that would not be designated in any historic district. So fingers crossed, we'll get our historic district approved here within a couple months, and that this would not be applicable in any locally approved, adopted historic districts. The other one that I think is a high priority would be allow housing near jobs, Senate Bill 499. This will allow residential units by right as primary uses in any zoning district. So that would include our central business district, our business district, and the highway commercial areas. So that they would allow the primary uses as well as the conversion of a portion of an existing building to residential. Now, we do allow commercial accessory dwelling units. So that the conversion isn't so much of a difference for us, but allowing only a residential on the property and not have it in use with a non-residential use, it would be the difference for that one. Senate Bill 688 is the local land use reform. This is going to be a lot of the information that's going to be in House Bill 765, which is the omnibus big one. So this is going to limit local governments to exercise their planning and zoning and development regulations as only those explicitly authorized by 160D. So that it limits the government's what the local governments do. So if there's any others planning legislation outside of 160D that allows us to do anything different, we cannot go use those statutes, only whatever is within 160D. There's some other ones in that one. They would, your residential zoning would be allowed by right no less than 4 units per acre in any residential zoning district. Parking requirements would be removed in establishing spaces, as well as requiring a certain size for parking. And it would dictate that a local official may be held personally liable for injury and damages and attorney fees if there were any challenges to a decision that was made. And then lastly, I would like to go over the House Bill 765, which is the Local Government Development Omnibus. And I would like to caveat this, like I did at the Board of Aldermen meeting, if you were there or watching, that the language of the bill has been reviewed by attorneys and planners and policymakers. The effects have the potential to change the whole landscape of local planning in North Carolina. And as soon as we get some more information and clarification on how this bill really may affect Southport specifically, I will definitely make sure to get that information as soon as possible. I won't wait for a packet. I will get that out to an email when I distribute that to everyone. The League of Municipalities put out a bulletin on April 4th, and I'm just going to go through their bullets. Again, you have the full outline from the School of Governments, and you can look this up, but this is they were saying that this would largely undo local land use planning and regulation. It's a 22-page bill. It's comprehensive in its scope. So they're going to create a mix of state mandates and bans of certain local land use activities that would lead to unregulated development and incompatible development and potentially damaging existing property values. It eliminates the ability for local governments and developers to negotiate voluntary conditions in the conditional zoning process. So other than just your dimensional standards, it would be very hard to offer any conditions that the city or the developer would want to incorporate in conditional zoning, which is the beauty of conditional zoning is you can kind of give and take with everyone. So if you want to, some design standards to make it look like historic downtown Southport, and they would like to have a little bit higher density or smaller lot sizes or narrower streets, then you can discuss those types of things to allow those things to happen. It bans municipalities from regulating parking or adopting street design standards other than NCDOT's. There's a vague conflict of interest rules that bars officials from voting on land use matters if they have a fixed opinion. So this is when there are legislative decisions such as this board for a zoning text or map amendment. It's saying that you kind of have to follow the quasi-judicial form, where if you have had ex parte communication and have not qualified that, then you cannot participate in the conversation or vote on the request. If you have a fixed opinion where you're like, I don't like this, no matter what you tell me, it will never change my mind. You cannot be included in the discussion or vote on the process. So there are a couple new things that's included in that. Again, it imposes some new civil penalties on local officials who violate the new or existing rules. Removing the ability of residents and local officials to pursue their unique visions for the community that are crucial in attracting new residents and business. So it mandates new minimum density requirements based solely on population size. It allows a lot of different developments by right, as we mentioned a couple from the earlier Senate bill. And you don't need to have I know that like major subdivisions would become automatic administrative approvals. So staff would be reviewing those and approving those on their own. It would not come to the planning board or the board of aldermen for their final decision on major site plans or major subdivisions.
Are you tired already?
And I'm exhausted.
Just thinking about what's going to become, if it goes through, what's going to become
Right.
administrative
Right.
decisions.
So, and that would also be for major site plans too. So it would
Mhm.
make a lot of these decisions that are coming for a recommendation board as yours, or you're the final decision on some of those, that they would not be allowed to be taken to this board. So that removes that as well. So there are some other things in here. I know we've been here a long time. But those are the big portions of those. They're saying that if there's a complete application for zoning map amendments, you have a 14-day period, which you have to show that it's complete. Then it starts a 90-day calendar review, which within that 90 days of staff saying that it's complete, not the planning board receiving it, staff getting it, you have 90 days to approve or deny the project. So that's fast. So there's, like I said, there was a lot in this. I think I've hit the big ones. The next big one is it would require 75% of property owners to sign a petition requesting designation of any historic districts. So that would be a major difference because now it's, any local government can propose it if they have enabling legislation from 160D to do that. And I think I've hit all the big ones. So that is your Cliff's Notes legislative update. But if there's as you're reading through these and you have any questions, or you would like me to, give you any further information how it may affect Southport, I'd be happy to talk with anyone one-on-one. Absolutely.
I noticed, not to belabor this much, Mo, but Senate Bill 314, it says not applicable to us, but this pretty much eliminates any ETJ in this county, right?
That is correct. So yes, Senate Bill 314 is going to take away the extraterritorial jurisdictions. And that is interesting because there is a clause in that states if you have ETJ and the city has to have zoning, but your county does not have zoning, you can keep your zoning jurisdiction in your ETJ. But if your county has adopted zoning, they will get to use their zoning regulations.
Wow. Okay. Just wanted to clarify that. And it's interesting how this march goes on towards centralizing everything in county governments and taking so much away from municipalities where we know best what's going on in our little towns, right? There was one other thing I was going to ask you, but now that kind of took that out of my brain. So I'll save that and get back with you about that later on. Thank you, ma'am.
Mo, could you revisit the historic district timeline? Like, where is it now? When would it reach the alderman?
We are waiting for our finalized land local designation report. We received a draft. And so we have looked at that. The Historic Preservation Commission has reviewed that draft, given staff the ability to, once we get that final, it goes straight to the state. I reached out to our consultants today to see where we were on that. So I'm hoping that we can get it to the state next week. They have up to 30 days to review it, and we can hopefully can speak with Christy Brantley and say, please help us get this through so we can get it approved by the Board of Aldermen. But it is a zoning overlay, so it would have to come to the planning board for your recommendation, like any other zone. So it would be any other zoning map amendment.
Just a point of information, this was my other question. Who in Southport City government do we consider to be our principal legislative liaison? All of this that we're talking about, who really speaks for Southport to speak to legislators about specific things?
I know that the Board of Aldermen speak with the legislators. I know that the mayor and the mayor pro tem have visited the Raleigh several times to speak with legislators. I know that I'm sure that Noah, our city manager, has been contacted about some of these as well. To say who is the true liaison, that is going to be the head of all of this, I don't know.
Yep. Thank you, ma'am.
Mo, quick question. Are there any dollars attached to any of these bills that are going to allow you to expand your staff and office space to cover this?
No, sir.
So they're going to put it all in the cities and towns and, yeah, thank you.
Anything else for Mo on the legislation? That's enough, isn't it? Thank you, ma'am. The other item under other business is our liaison update. Mr. Lay, do you have anything for us? If you can come to a mic for us, Frank, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mo, tremendous presentation tonight, a great deal of information. He did a great deal of work putting all this together. As you can tell, there's a lot of stuff thrown at this board, a lot for you to chew on for the next few days. Probably wear out your teeth. You'll need another set by the time you get through all this stuff. I agree with the chair. It looks like they're trying to do away with all the bills that are in Raleigh now. It looks almost like they're trying to do away with the municipalities. Everything has been kind of, would you say, taken away from us? I really don't understand where they're going from, but there's a lot of very onerous things here. So it'll be interesting to see where these things go for. I don't know how many of these are going to go through. We don't know. But there's a lot of things that they're proposed, and I don't see any of them that are municipality friendly.
Thank you, sir. Okay, item I. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there any other other business to be brought before the board tonight from any member? We'll move on to item I then, our announcements. Anyone have any announcements tonight? I would encourage all of us and all of the citizenry and any visitors that you have for Easter weekend to participate in any and all of the activities we've got going on. For the City Spring Fest is Saturday. Looks to be a gorgeous weekend, so get out and support what we've got going on from our city. With that being said, Fred, please.
Just as a reminder, the annual Southport Arbor Day celebration, April 25th, Friday, at 11 a.m. in Franklin Square Park. It should be a fun event, weather permits. There'll be music, there'll be speakers, there'll be show and tell about everything that's been done in the park to date by Bartlett Tree. And at the end, there should be a sweet treat.
Anything else? Thank you, Fred. Appreciate that. With no other business, can I get a motion for us to adjourn, please? Fred, and a second? Thank you, Will. I'm sorry, was that John? I'm sorry. I just heard a voice from afar. Thank you. All right, we've got a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? You better not. Motion passes unanimously. We wish everybody a happy Easter. Celebrate it in your own faith. And for me, I will say Christ is risen indeed. Good night, everyone. We are adjourned at 8:06.